It blew my mind how it was able to like cut to the heart of my own bullshit at the same time as unpacking so much of society as we understand it today, so much of society as we know it today. These books changed how I see society. There's a lot of books out there that kind of proclaim to be able to turn your whole perspective on its head and just change how you see things on like a fundamental level, but I don't think that's always the answer. The best books, they deepen the perspective you already have. They bring those things that you're sort of peripherally aware of, or those feelings that are just sort of, you know, on the edge of you noticing them, and they bring those into view with a precision and a nuance that's sorely needed in this day and age. Hi, I'm Andy Fellows, and this channel is all about living life with integrity and independence of mind in the face of cults and destructive spirituality and toxic online culture. So let's talk about this. Book 1. On my way into work today, I saw this billboard selling Coke. The people were smiling about the Coke, presumably. I don't think I've ever smiled at a drink. Not at the thought of it, just like looking at the bottle going, yeah, good drink that. Maybe the sense of relief you get from drinking it, or the surprise the first time you taste it. Isn't it so fucked up that the person in this ad trying to sell me, who's fucking miserable, a drink using a fake smile? A smile we all know is fake. None of us believe it. And yet I'm still thinking I might buy a Coke on the way home. That's not a smile anymore, is it? Not really. A smile is an expression of human joy, fucking happiness, and here it is, a hollow harbinger, a vehicle for some commercial expediency. Buy this and you'll be happy, like me with my fucking brown tooth-rotting poison. Fuck me. This really is the future, isn't it? And I still want a Coke now. Fuck. For as long as I can remember, I've heard people talk about the state of the world, the state of society, with this tone that hints at a sense of resignation. Like, that's just the way things are. Like, they've accepted this cultural mythology of how things are, and nothing anyone can do will change it. This book, Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher, really speaks to that point. This sense of resignation, what he calls capitalist realism, that, you know, this is how it is, and nothing's going to change. This book does a really good job of unpacking that sort of end of history attitude that we have to the norms of our society, capitalism in particular. And the book really eloquently challenges this sense that I think a lot of us have, that to become better adjusted to the dysfunction and the alienation of our society is a sign of maturity. Overall, capitalist realism is a really well-informed response to statements like things aren't going to change. And what I love about it is that it kind of throughout the book, it rhymes with this sort of gut reaction that I always have to hearing people say things like that, which is, well, not with that attitude, you know? Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher, book 1. Let's talk about book 2. They called me crazy when I did what I thought was right, when I resolved to end my torment, when I gave in, when I let go. They called me crazy when I refused to hold it in any longer, when I refused to hold myself together even though I was bursting at the seams, when I screamed out, "You made me this way," and my first crime was letting you. When my knees buckled and my hands shook and the laughter broke its binds and the tears streamed down from my eyes. They called me crazy when they asked if I knew what I'd done, if I could feel the hurt I'd excavated in this ocean of potential, in this sea of sadness. They called me crazy until I told them, yes, I see the world you see and I hate it. I refuse it because it keeps me caged up. They called me crazy until they knew I did something they could never do. I changed this sad, sick world when all they do is tape up leaks and reprimand the ones who dare to try, the ones who dare to do more, who dare to fight it. They call me crazy until they see themselves in me. Then they call me evil. Making Evil by Julia Shaw asks us to put aside the easy label of evil and take a closer look at some of the nuances that many of us either fail to register or just tend to overlook when it comes to the more uncomfortable side of life and human behavior. It's so easy to call someone evil or call something evil and then just never give it another thought. And like, even though we don't condone that person's behavior, I don't necessarily think that means that we're above treating them like human or that they've forfeited their humanity. And I think that the way that we imagine evil to exist, the way that we think of what we conceive of as evil, it's set up in such a way that we're given this convenient scapegoat when we're done empathizing, or we find it too difficult to empathize with the person that we're talking about, looking at, speaking to. I think the same can be said about words like crazy and stupid as well. Like, just because they're convenient shorthand doesn't mean they're necessarily the best terms if what we want to do is get an accurate read on the situation. And I think oftentimes we stop at the shorthand and don't necessarily go any further, oftentimes because it's difficult or because it requires a lot from us that goes beyond what is normally expected of us in society. When we're looking at someone that society's deemed evil, right? Where is the social incentive to empathize with that person? Julia Shaw's done a really good job in this book of sort of going through those darker parts of humanity. The way that she unpacks the nuances of them does a really good job of consigning the word evil to the lazy bin, in my mind. Something worth mentioning here as well, I think, is that whenever we see someone, think of someone that we've termed evil, it can be really easy to see that person in a way that creates a distance in our mind between who they are and who we are. It's really easy to see them as someone who is like fundamentally, essentially different from who or what we are as an individual, and imagine them to be some sort of like grotesque mutilation of what it means to be human, some sort of hideous anomaly. And yet, even though we might not agree with the extremes to which they take their ideas, their feelings, their behavior, their actions, whatever, you probably empathized a little bit, even if it was just a little bit, with the character in the vignette that played just before I started talking about this book. And I think that goes some way to illustrating that, even if we don't agree with the extremes to which they take these things, there is something common in us and those we call evil that we don't tend to want to look at, but is nonetheless there. But again, there's an uncomfortable fact there that in order to not otherize them, in order to not see them as something so fundamentally different from ourselves, we have to have a sense of security in our own selves, in our own values, in our own principles, in our own morality. We need to have a steadfastness in our morality. But they also have that too. So that is also uncomfortable, and I think again that speaks to why evil has become such a useful thing for us, but may also stunt our ability to have empathy with people and have a nuanced view of these kinds of things. And I think Making Evil by Julia Shaw does a really good job of going into that and unpacking that concisely and eloquently. Have you ever taken someone's hand or had someone hold you in their arms and tell you everything's going to be all right? And believed it, like really believed it, believed them. Growing up, I didn't have that, not really. And as I've grown up, that's become this overwhelming, borderline debilitating sense that I'm walking around on stilts and someone's tugging the rug out from under me. And the only time I get any relief, any at all, is when I think of how all this, the struggling, the constant uncertainty of it all, the horrible stuff, the injustice, the bigotry, the cruelty, the selfishness, the victimhood, the patriarchy, the white supremacy, the systemic violence, the hatred, the replacement, the controlling elite Satan system of things, all of it. The only time I get any relief is when I think it will be over soon. As long as I show up and do the work, do better, spread the good news, as long as I give myself up, dissolve into the whole, I don't have to worry anymore. Everything's going to be all right. This was honestly one of the best books that I've read maybe ever. In fact, not maybe, definitely ever. The True Believer by Eric Hoffer. It blew my mind how it was able to cut to the heart of my own bullshit at the same time as unpacking so much of society as we understand it today, so much of society as we know it today. One phrase I picked up from the book was the burden of liberty, and that's exactly it, isn't it? That's exactly how it feels. I think it's really easy when you're someone who doesn't have that practice, critical thinking skill, and you don't have that trust in yourself and your own judgment to get caught up in something that has this beautiful grand utopian view of the future. If we just do X, Y, Z and we apply ourselves, then everything's going to be better. And in my life, I've fallen for that a couple of times. So this book did a really good job of showing maybe part of why that happened to me. As someone who's been involved in a few of these sort of things in the past, it's not always so comfortable to see yourself described so accurately on the page. And especially like in the case of this book as well, like this was written years and years and years before I was born. So if you're looking for something that's going to give you an interesting perspective on what it is that sort of runs as a common thread throughout cults and things like QAnon and New Age spirituality, online sort of cultures, politically left and right, then this book's a great place to go. It's really, really interesting and does a great job of sort of drilling into some of the things that make mass movements what they are. What I think these books do incredibly well is they shine a light on the things that as a society we've become accustomed to not looking at. Oftentimes because they are so uncomfortable to look at that we would rather just not. But I think when we turn to look at these things, that's when we stand to gain the most in terms of self-knowledge, in terms of a deeper view of society, and in terms of learning more and more about what it means to be human. How we see the world is a gradually morphing project, an undertaking of a lifetime, and every so often something comes along that challenges us to look deeper, to inspect the tried and tested more closely, to dig out assumptions and feelings and beliefs that we've internalized over the years. They encourage us to re-examine aspects of the world and our place in it. Sometimes that's even down to the level of our unexamined motivations for thinking the things we think and doing the things we do. These 3 books do exactly that and more, and I'm pretty certain that if you read them, you will see society differently. I'm Andy Fellows, and if you enjoyed this video today, please consider joining me over on Patreon for extra content every week, and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell if you want to get notified anytime I upload a video. Otherwise, please be kind and ask good questions, and I'll see you in the next one.